The Guns of Tombstone Colony by Jansen Davies. Chapter 1. Tombstone in the Stars. The stars didn't twinkle over Tombstone Colony. They pulsed like dying embers. At the edge of the known galaxy, where the gravitational tides of the Perseus Rift bent light and time, Tombstone was less a settlement and more a scar. A mining colony built atop the richest deposit of Zentrium in the quadrant. It was supposed to be a beacon of prosperity. Instead, it became a crucible of violence. Humans and aliens worked side by side in the mines, their bodies pressed against the heat and pressure of the planet's crust. The minerals they extracted powered starships, terraforming engines, and weapons of unimaginable scale. But when the shifts ended, the real danger began. The colony's streets were a war zone. Miners, drunk on synthetic rotgut and adrenaline, rampaged through the commercial sectors. Shops were looted. Families were harassed. Innocent aliens, those with scaled skin, bioluminescent eyes, or non-humanoid forms, were hunted for sport. The murder rate was the highest in the outer systems. Law was a faded memory. Order a joke. Mayor Willem Vol stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the chaos unfold below. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of failure. He had once believed in Tombstone, believed it could be different. Now he watched his colony burn from within. Behind him, the council hall buzzed with tension. 12 members, each representing a faction, human, alien, corporate, independent, argued over solutions. Deploy more security drones, already hacked, hire mercenaries. They join the looters, declare martial law. They didn't have the firepower. "We are losing this colony," Vol said, turning to face them. "If we don't act now, Tombstone will collapse, and the blood will be on our hands." Silence fell. Then Ellen Marr, the historian, leaned forward. Her voice was quiet but resolute. "There is one option. It's unorthodox, possibly insane." Vol raised an eyebrow. "At this point, I'll take insane." Marr tapped her data pad. A hologram flickered to life. An old Earth town, dusty streets, wooden buildings, men in long coats with iron on their hips. Tombstone, Arizona, Earth, 1881. A town plagued by violence until they hired a marshal, Wyatt Earp, and his deputies. The council murmured. Some scoffed, others leaned in. "You're suggesting we, what? Hire ghosts?" "No," Marr said. "We abduct legends." She outlined the plan. Use the chronogate, a forbidden piece of tech buried in the colony's archives, to reach back in time, extract the lawmen, offer them a deal. Let them do what they did best, bring order to an untamed town. The room erupted. Cost, ethics, risk. The chronogate was unstable. The energy required would bankrupt the colony. "Then we tax the mining companies," Marr said. "They created this mess. Let them pay to clean it up." Vol stared at the hologram. Wyatt Earp's eyes burned with conviction. Doc Holliday's smirk hinted at madness. Virgil and Morgan flanked them like sentinels. "Do it," Vol said. "Open the gate." Outside, Tombstone Colony screamed. Inside, a plan was born. Chapter 2. The Council's Last Stand. The council hall was a relic, half stone, half alloy, built when Tombstone Colony still believed in permanence. Now its walls bore scorch marks from past riots, and its security turrets had long since been disabled by rogue miners. The 12 council members sat in a circle beneath the cracked dome, their faces lit by the flicker of failing power grids and the glow of holographic data feeds. Mayor Willem Vol stood at the center, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "We've lost Sector 9. Again. 3 shops torched, 2 families dead. One of them was Threxian. If the Threx Alliance pulls support, we lose our oxygen shipments." Counselor Marr, the historian, remained calm. Then we move forward with the chronogate. Counselor Deltar, representing the mining conglomerate, slammed her fist on the table. You want to bankrupt us to chase a story from the past. Time travel is outlawed for a reason. You don't tamper with causality just because your streets are on fire. Marr didn't flinch. We're not tampering, we're recruiting. Tombstone, Arizona, Earth, 1881. A town as violent as ours. They hired Wyatt Earp. He brought order. We need that kind of clarity, that kind of fearlessness. Counselor Vaughn, a Zentari diplomat with translucent skin and a voice like wind through glass, leaned forward. And what makes you think these primitives will understand our world, our laws, our species, ? They don't need to, Marr said. They only need to understand justice. A silence fell. Vol paced the room, his boots echoing against the stone. He turned to the council. Let's be honest. We've tried everything. Drones, mercenaries, sanctions. Nothing works. The miners don't fear us. They don't respect us. But maybe, just maybe, they'll fear a man who doesn't blink when he draws his weapon. Counselor Deltar scoffed. And how do you plan to pay for this fantasy? We tax the mining companies, Marr said. A security levy. Retroactive. You've profited off this chaos long enough. Deltar's eyes narrowed. You'll start a corporate war. Then let it start, Vol said, because if we don't act, Tombstone Colony dies. The vote was called. One by one, hands were raised. Varn abstained. Deltar voted no. The rest voted yes. The chronogate would be activated. In the depths of the colony, beneath the old reactor core, a team of engineers began prepping the forbidden device. It hadn't been used in decades, not since the last temporal experiment ended in disaster. But Marr had studied the logs. She knew the risks, and she knew the coordinates. October 26th, 1881. Tombstone, Arizona, Earth. The moment before history was made. Chapter 3. The Time Heist. The chronogate was buried beneath Tombstone Colony's original reactor core, sealed behind layers of radiation shielding and bureaucratic denial. It was a myth to most, a relic of the early expansion era, when humanity still believed it could master time. Now it hummed to life for the first time in 70 years. Ellen Marr stood beside the gate's control console, her fingers dancing across the interface. The engineers, 2 humans and a Threxian, watched nervously as the temporal coils began to spin. The air thickened, gravity warped. A low-frequency hum filled the chamber, vibrating bones and thoughts alike. Coordinates locked, Marr said. October 26th, 1881. Tombstone, Arizona, Earth, 2:47 p.m. local time. Mayor Vol entered, flanked by 2 security officers in outdated armor. Are we ready? As ready as we'll ever be, Marr replied. Once the gate opens, we'll have 30 seconds to extract them. Any longer, and we risk a temporal echo. Vol nodded. Do it. The engineers activated the gate. A beam of light erupted from the center, folding space into a shimmering vortex. Through the distortion, a dusty street appeared, wooden buildings, horse-drawn wagons, and 4 men walking with purpose. Wyatt Earp led the group, his eyes scanning the horizon. Doc Holliday followed, pale and coughing, a revolver loose in his hand. Virgil and Morgan flanked them, steady and grim. They were headed toward the OK Corral, unaware that history was about to be rewritten. Engaging retraction beam, Marr said. A pulse of energy shot forward, enveloping the 4 men. They froze mid-step, eyes wide, mouths open. Then they vanished, ripped from their timeline and pulled across the stars. The chronogate shut down with a thunderous crack. The chamber went dark. Silence reigned. Then, in the center of the room, 4 figures collapsed to the floor. Wyatt Earp rolled to his feet, weapon drawn. Doc Holliday coughed violently, eyes darting. Virgil and Morgan scrambled into defensive stances. "What in God's name?" Wyatt began. "You've been brought forward in time," Vol said calmly. "Across the galaxy, to a colony named Tombstone. We need your help." The lawmen stared. Doc Holliday laughed, then winced. "Hell of a fever dream." "You're not dreaming," Mar said. "You're in the year 2475, and we're offering you a deal." Wyatt lowered his weapon slightly. "Go on. Clean up our colony, restore order. In exchange, we'll return you to your time, with your weight in gold." Doc Holliday raised an eyebrow. "Gold, you say?" Virgil looked around. "And what exactly are we up against?" Vol hesitated. "Miners, aliens, mercenaries, chaos." Morgan Earp cracked his knuckles. "Sounds familiar." Wyatt holstered his revolver. "We'll need supplies, weapons, authority." "You'll have it," Vol said. "Starting now." Doc Holliday coughed again. A medbot floated toward him, scanned his lungs, and injected a nanite serum. He blinked. The pain vanished. The cough stopped. "Well," Doc said, smiling, "that's new." Wyatt turned to his brothers. "We've tamed one Tombstone. Let's see if we can do it again." Outside, the colony burned. Inside, the past prepared to fight the future. Chapter 4. Welcome to the Future. The colony's air was thick with ozone and ash. Tombstone's Central Avenue, once a bustling trade corridor, was now a corridor of wreckage. Neon signs flickered above shattered storefronts. Alien blood stained the pavement in iridescent streaks. The scent of burning metal mixed with the sour tang of fear. Wyatt Earp stepped out of the council hall, boots crunching on broken glass. He scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing at the sight of a miner dragging a screaming Threxian child into an alley. Without a word, he drew his revolver and strode forward. Doc Holliday followed, his gait steadier than it had been in years. The nanite serum had done more than cure his tuberculosis. It had sharpened him. He twirled his pistol, eyes gleaming with mischief and menace. Virgil and Morgan flanked them, shotguns slung across their backs, eyes alert. They wore their old dusters, now reinforced with polymer mesh. Their badges, replicated from historical records, gleamed under the colony's twin suns. The lawmen were anachronisms in a world of plasma rifles and hovercraft, but they moved with purpose. And purpose, in Tombstone Colony, was a rare and dangerous thing. They reached the alley. The miner turned, sneering. His face was scarred, his eyes cybernetic. He raised a pulse blade. Wyatt didn't hesitate. One shot. The blade clattered to the ground. The miner screamed, clutching his shattered wrist. "Drop the child," Wyatt said. The miner obeyed. The Threxian child scrambled away, disappearing into the shadows. Doc knelt beside the wounded man. "You're lucky. Wyatt usually aims for the head." Morgan hauled the miner to his feet. "You're under arrest." The man laughed. "There's no law here." "There is now," Virgil said. They dragged him to the makeshift jail, a repurposed cargo bay reinforced with magnetic locks. Inside, 2 other miners sat, bruised and bleeding. They stared at the newcomers with a mix of fear and disbelief. Wyatt locked the cell. "Tell your friends, Tombstone's changed." Word spread fast. By nightfall, 10 more miners had been arrested. Some resisted, most didn't. The element of surprise was on the lawmen's side. Their weapons were primitive but lethal. Their tactics were brutal but effective. The colony began to shift. Shopkeepers reopened their doors. Families emerged from hiding. Aliens walked the streets without fear for the first time in years. Mayor Vole watched from the council hall, stunned. "They're doing it," he whispered. Ellen Marr nodded. "Legends don't need technology, they need conviction." But not everyone was impressed. In orbit above the colony, aboard the mining conglomerate's flagship Profit Margin, executives reviewed the footage. They saw their miners jailed, their assets threatened, their authority challenged. "They're costing us millions," one said. "They're destabilizing the sector," said another. The CEO, a cold-eyed woman named Lara Cobb, leaned forward. "Send the mercenaries. End this." Back on the colony, Wyatt Earp stood beneath the stars, revolver holstered, eyes scanning the horizon. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew how to meet it. Chapter 5. First Patrol. The colony's dawn came in shades of rust and violet, filtered through the twin suns and the dust storms that never quite settled. Tombstone's streets were quieter now, less screaming, fewer fires. But quiet didn't mean safe. It meant waiting. Wyatt Earp stood at the edge of the colony's perimeter, watching the horizon. His instincts, honed in the deserts of Arizona, told him something was coming. Not chaos, not drunken miners. Something organized. Behind him, Doc Holliday leaned against a support beam, cleaning his pistol with a cloth that had once been white. "You ever get the feeling we're being watched?" "We're always being watched," Wyatt said. "Question is, by who?" Virgil and Morgan were patrolling the southern sector, checking in on the newly reopened shops and speaking with alien families who still flinched at the sight of humans. The Earps didn't wear helmets or body armor. They wore conviction. And in Tombstone Colony, that was starting to mean something. Inside the council hall, Mayor Vole paced nervously. The mining company had gone silent. No transmissions, no threats, just a blackout. Ellen Marr reviewed satellite scans, her brow furrowed. "They're coming," she said. "A dropship just entered orbit. No transponder, no registry. It's Mercs." Vole cursed. "How many?" 10, maybe 12. Heavily armed, no insignia. They're landing outside the colony perimeter." Wyatt entered the hall, dust on his coat, eyes sharp. "Let them land." Vole blinked. "You're not going to intercept?" "No," Wyatt said. "I want them to walk in. I want them to feel safe." Doc grinned. "Then we show them they're not." The mercenaries landed at dusk. Their ship, a matte black transport with scorched hull plating, settled on the outskirts of Tombstone. They disembarked in formation, scanning for resistance. Their gear was top tier: plasma rifles, adaptive armor, neural comms. They expected drones, maybe a few guards. They didn't expect Wyatt Earp. He stood alone in the center of Main Street, hands resting on his belt, revolver holstered. The Mercs approached, weapons raised. "You're in violation of colony law," Wyatt said. "This town's gun-free." The lead Merc, a brute named Bort, laughed. "You're joking." "No," Wyatt said. "Drop your weapons, or get dropped yourselves." Bort raised his rifle. "You're one man." Doc stepped out from a rooftop, shotgun in hand. "He's never alone." Virgil and Morgan emerged from alleyways, flanking the mercenaries. The lawmen opened fire. The first volley was carnage. Shotguns roared. Revolvers cracked. The Mercs returned fire, but their targeting systems struggled with the erratic movement and low-tech tactics. Doc Holliday moved like smoke, his shotgun barking death. Morgan took 2 down with a single blast. Virgil fought like a wall, unyielding, methodical. Wyatt stood through the gunfire, his revolver precise. He didn't miss. He never missed. Within minutes, the mercenaries were down, 6 dead, 4 wounded, 2 surrendered. The survivors were dragged to the makeshift jail, bleeding and stunned. Doc leaned against the wall, reloading. Well, that was invigorating. Wyatt turned to the crowd that had gathered, miners, shopkeepers, aliens. This is your town. You want it back? Stand with us. The crowd didn't cheer, but they didn't run. That was enough. In orbit aboard the profit margin, CEO Lyra Cobb watched the footage. Her mercenaries had been slaughtered by men with antique weapons and outdated tactics. She turned to her aide. Send the fleet. Back on the colony, Wyatt holstered his revolver and looked to the sky. The real war was coming. Chapter 6. The Mercenary Response. The stars above Tombstone Colony shimmered with unnatural precision, too symmetrical, too quiet. Wyatt Earp stood on the rooftop of the old comms tower, watching the sky. He'd seen storms before. This one was coming from above. Inside the council hall, Mayor Vole slammed his fist against the console. They sent mercenaries. We beat them. Now they send warships? Ellen Marr didn't look up from her datapad. A full squadron, 12 attack craft, armed with plasma cannons, orbital strafe capability, and anti-personnel drones. They're not here to negotiate. Councillor Deltar, red-faced and trembling, shouted, "We told you this would happen. You poked the beast." Wyatt entered, calm as ever. The beast was already feeding. We just made it choke. Doc Holliday followed, flipping a coin between his fingers. So, what's the plan, Marshal? Vole looked at Wyatt, desperation in his eyes. We can't fight ships. We don't have air defenses. We don't even have a functioning shield grid. Then we don't fight like soldiers, Wyatt said. We fight like survivors. He turned to Marr. Where's the landing zone? North Ridge, they'll strafe first, then deploy ground troops. Wyatt nodded. We hold the ridge. We make it costly. We make it loud. Virgil and Morgan were already prepping the colony's defenses, what little there were. Old mining carts were converted into barricades. Plasma batteries were rigged with tripwires. The jail was reinforced with scrap metal and shield plating. The colony's citizens watched in silence. Some fled. Most stayed. They'd seen what the lawmen could do, and they wanted to believe. At dawn, the sky split open. The first ship screamed overhead, its engines rattling the rooftops. Plasma fire scorched the ground, vaporizing a section of the eastern wall. Wyatt didn't flinch. He raised his revolver, aimed at the sky, and fired. The bullet, an old lead slug, hit nothing. But the act mattered. The second ship hovered, scanning for resistance. Doc Holliday stepped into the open, shotgun raised. Come on, you bastards, let's dance. The third ship began its strafe run. Morgan and Virgil opened fire from the rooftops, targeting weak points in the hull. Sparks flew, smoke poured, but the ships kept coming. Then Wyatt saw it, a seam in the lead ship's undercarriage, a fuel rod casing exposed for maintenance. He took a breath, aimed, and fired. The bullet struck true. The ship lurched, engines sputtering. It veered off course, straight into the squadron's formation. The explosion was biblical. Fire bloomed across the sky. One ship detonated, then another, then all. The colony shook, windows shattered, alarms wailed. Then silence. Wyatt lowered his revolver. Doc stared at the sky, mouth open. Well, that was unexpected. Virgil climbed down from the rooftop, covered in soot. You hit the fuel rods? Lucky shot, Wyatt said. Morgan laughed. You don't believe in luck. No, Wyatt said. I believe in timing. The colony erupted in cheers. Miners hugged aliens. Shopkeepers wept. The council hall buzzed with disbelief. On the profit margin, CEO Lyra Cobb watched the footage in horror. Her fleet gone. Her reputation shattered. Other colonies began transmitting demands, autonomy, protection, justice. Tombstone Colony had become a symbol, and Wyatt Earp had become a legend again. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The smoke hadn't cleared, but the silence was louder than any explosion. Tombstone Colony stood still, its battered streets, scorched rooftops, and stunned citizens frozen in the aftermath of an impossible victory. Wyatt Earp sat on the steps of the council hall, revolver resting across his knees. His coat was torn, his boots scorched, but his eyes were steady. Around him the colony stirred, slowly, cautiously, like survivors emerging from a cave. Doc Holliday limped over, a fresh bandage wrapped around his leg. "You know, I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen a man shoot down a starship with a six-shooter." Wyatt didn't smile. Wasn't the gun, was the moment. Virgil and Morgan were organizing cleanup crews, miners and aliens working side by side to clear debris, rebuild barricades, and tend to the wounded. The makeshift jail was now a triage center. The doctor, a Threxian healer named Vesh, moved between patients with quiet efficiency. Inside the council hall, Mayor Vole addressed the colony via holofeed. His voice was firm, resolute. "Tombstone Colony has endured its darkest hour. We were abandoned by the corporations, terrorized by our own, and nearly destroyed by greed. But we stood, we fought, and we survived." He paused, looking directly into the lens. "From this day forward, the colony will be governed by law, by justice, by unity. The mining companies will pay their dues. The miners will obey the law. And anyone who threatens this peace will answer to Tombstone." The feed cut. Across the galaxy, the message echoed. On the profit margin, CEO Lara Cobb stared at the transmission. Her advisors argued damage control, PR campaigns, legal retaliation. But the numbers didn't lie. Other colonies were rising, demanding autonomy, threatening strikes. Tombstone had become a contagion, a symbol of resistance. Cobb relented. The taxes were paid. The miners were ordered to comply. Any who refused were fired, without transport home. Back on the colony, the transformation began. Shops reopened, schools resumed, alien families walked freely. The murder rate dropped to 0. Wyatt and his deputies patrolled daily, their presence enough to keep the peace. But they knew it wouldn't last. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Mayor Vole approached Wyatt. "You've done more than we ever imagined. The chronogate is ready. We can send you back." Wyatt looked at his brothers, at Doctor, at the colony. "You sure you want us gone?" Vole nodded. "You were never meant to stay. You were meant to remind us what the law was." Doc coughed once lightly. "And what about our payment?" Vole smiled. "Your weight in gold, as promised." No one mentioned that gold in this future was worthless, a mining byproduct. But the lawmen didn't ask. They packed quietly. No speeches, no farewells. At dawn, they stepped into the chronogate. Chapter 8. Return to dust. The chronogate pulsed once, then vanished. October 26th, 1881. Tombstone, Arizona. Earth. The 4 lawmen stood exactly where they had been, mid-stride, boots crunching on dry dirt, the OK Corral just ahead. The sun was high, the air was dry, the future was gone. Doc Holliday coughed once, out of habit, then smiled. "Still gone," he whispered. Morgan adjusted his hat. Virgil checked his shotgun. Wyatt said nothing. They walked forward as history demanded. The shootout at the OK Corral unfolded as it always had, brief, brutal, legendary. But something had changed. The men who fought it had already faced a war far greater. They moved with precision, with calm, with the knowledge of what chaos truly looked like. After the dust settled, they didn't speak of the stars. Not to reporters, not to friends, not even to each other. But late at night, Doc would stare at the sky, eyes tracing constellations that didn't belong to Earth. Morgan would sketch alien faces in the margins of his journal. Virgil would dream of twin suns and bioluminescent children. And Wyatt would ride into the desert alone to a place only 3 other people knew of. There, marked by a cairn of red stone, lay buried 4 crates of gold, each man's weight, paid in full. Worthless in the future, priceless in the past, Tombstone Colony became a legend in its own time. The uprising spread, mining companies reformed, alien rights were codified, and in the archives of the outer systems, a single entry remained. Order was restored by 4 unknown lawmen. Their methods were primitive, their impact eternal. Back on Earth, the legend of Wyatt Earp and his brothers lived on. But the truth, the real truth, was buried in the stars. And legends, after all, are just history with better timing. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.